It's Huluween on Disney+. Watch frightful family favorites like Hocus Pocus and Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas on Disney+.
I am the Pumpkin King!
Then take the terror to 10 with a thrilling new remake of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Scream, and more with Huluween on Disney+. All these and more streaming this Halloween season with Hulu on Disney+. Bundle subscription required. 18+. Select Hulu content via Disney+. Additional content on Hulu app. Terms apply. Visit disneyplus.com/Hulu for details.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Your boss is going off at you for missing a deadline and you swear the clock just moved backwards. Suddenly, you remember the pack of Tic Tacs on your desk. Now you're riding horseback on the beach, the smell of citrus in the air. And what's this? Your boss is sitting behind you, breathing heavenly fresh mint? Refresh your mouth and mind and share your good vibes with Tic Tac.
This is True Spies, the podcast that takes you deep inside the greatest secret missions of all time. Week by week, you'll hear the true stories behind the operations that have shaped the world we live in. You'll meet the people who live life undercover. What do they know? What are their skills? And what would you do in their position? I'm Rhiannon Needs, and this is True Spies from SPYSCAPE Studios. Chasing Chi, Part 1. The Engineer.
So there's like 4 guys in the back, all curled up in fetal positions with whatever equipment we need for photography and that sort of thing, and we drive.
In the dead of night, a minivan sidles through the suburban streets of Downey, California.
You're lying on the back, you're watching the lights dance on the roof of the car from headlights, and you're hearing the walkie-talkie traffic as they're telling us the neighborhood's clear.
The vehicle rolls to a halt. The engine splutters to a stop. And carefully, oh so slowly, the doors swing open. Its occupants unfold, clown car style, and find themselves standing on a painfully unremarkable driveway.
And then we're all told just in a straight line, walk across the grass and go into the house.
The group crosses the threshold, and the low beams of torches swing around the stifling, dusty interior of an ordinary suburban home. Now, the work begins.
We photographed a lot. We found numerous laptops and desktops in his little second bedroom, which served as a computer room. And we took forensic copies of all digital items there, thumb drives, CDs, and the hard drives on these computers.
What you're hearing are the opening stages of a covert search, a delicate operation undertaken by special agents of the FBI.
A covert search is very different from a criminal search. Criminal search, you don't care if they know you were there. They obviously know you're there. Covert search, you have to leave no trace that you were there.
If the target of this investigation suspects that he's being surveilled, there's every chance that he'll flee the country. And if he does, an extradition will not be forthcoming. Because the target of this investigation is in the service of a foreign power. A superpower, in fact. His name is Chi Mak. He's a spy. And you're about to meet the man who took him down.
Well, my name's James E. Gaylord. I go by Jim. I was the case agent for the Chi Mak case. Worked for the FBI almost 32 years, both as a special agent and as a supervisory special agent.
Most of Jim's career was spent in Orange County, in Greater Los Angeles,
which has a resident agency there, basically a satellite office of the Los Angeles division.
Like a lot of the FBI agents we encounter on True Spies, Jim's storied career fulfilled a childhood ambition.
As a junior in high school, I had an FBI agent come by and speak to our government class, and that hooked me. The guy was wearing a suit, looked really professional, sounded it, and I thought, that's what I want to do, and did everything I could education-wise to get into the Bureau from that point.
The FBI looks for many different specialties among its recruits, but one of the most surefire routes into the Bureau is a background in law.
on others to be an accountant or have specialty in languages, engineering, or something else. I didn't have the other specialties, but I could do law school. So that's what I did. Never took the bar. I wasn't interested in being a practicing attorney, but it qualified me for one of their 5 programs of entry into the FBI. And fortunately, it succeeded. And I entered the FBI in 1982. Was trained for 4 months at Quantico, then assigned to Minneapolis, where I worked first financial crimes and then organized crime.
But for Jim, a job in counterintelligence was always the goal. These were, after all, the dark days of the Cold War.
Working against the Soviet Union had always been my dream. No one's got a greater hatred of communism or what it's done, tens of millions it's killed. And so I decided I wanted to do that.
In time, an opportunity presented itself.
I saw an opening. There was an internal advertising for a need for speakers. And not so much for Russian, but for Chinese and some other languages.
The idea of working against China, that other great communist bloc, intrigued Jim. But there was one problem.
If I put in for Chinese would mean I would be assigned to New York. And back then, they didn't have cost of living allowances. And so agents going to New York were poor, living way out in the suburbs, long commutes because they couldn't afford to live there.
That lifestyle didn't appeal. And if anything, the Big Apple was already oversubscribed.
At the time, everyone was going to New York. It was a vacuum, sucking up every available agent.
Luckily, there were other options. Roads less traveled, and yet closer to home.
If you take Vietnamese, you can go to Orange County. Basically, I was from Southern California. I knew they had a large Vietnamese population in Orange County, so I knew I'd be going there. And so I went to Monterey, the Defense Language Institute. It's an Army school, and went there for 2.5 years. I became quite fluent in Vietnamese at the time.
And so, Jim was California bound.
And then was sent down to Orange County, where I worked with another agent, Colleen McKay, who's kind of my mentor. We worked for many years in Little Saigon, which is in Orange County, largest community of Vietnamese outside of Vietnam itself in the world, and loved the work.
In the residents of Little Saigon, Jim found a community of people who hated communism as much as he did.
They were the target of Vietnam's government, and they welcomed me when we would come to the door to talk to them about any suspicions or people in the area that we were looking at. So I did that for over a decade.
Flash forward to 2004, and Jim Gaylord is at his desk at SARA, S-A-R-A. That stands for Santa Ana Resident Agency, a satellite office of the main FBI outfit in Los Angeles. By this time in his career, he heads up a division called SARA 4, which deals in counterintelligence.
Mostly against Vietnam, but I'd also work cases against Iran, China, Russia, etc.
His supervisor, Sal Valdez, summons him to his office.
And he says, Jim, I got a call from headquarters. They got some big case they can't tell us about, except that it's about China, and they need our squad to take the lead on it. Okay, sounds good, I said. He said, but I want you to be the case agent.
Good news, right? Not so much.
My partner regarding Vietnam, Colleen, had just left, retired, and I was looking forward to kind of handling the whole program on my own, and I was looking forward to it. And so I did not want to do this. I knew anything headquarters was telling us to do would mean a lot of oversight from headquarters, a lot of headaches, and didn't think we would have the resources for any big case that headquarters was interested in. So I fought tooth and nail, but Sal kept giving me reasons why I had to be the one. I was now the most senior agent on the squad who would be there for the next number of years. He complimented my paperwork, which was his way of giving me the bad news that, no, you're it.
In that moment, his way with paperwork might have felt like a burden. But trust us, he'd be grateful for it later. So, reluctantly, Jim accepted his mission. But he was still in the dark about its actual purpose.
So Sal and I flew out to Washington, D.C. to be briefed on the case. And first thing we had to do the next morning before we could be briefed is we had to be polygraphed. Now, Sal and I, when we were more senior agents, older school, we had never been polygraphed.
Jim and Sal were familiar with the process. They'd overseen thousands of the things. But he still wasn't prepared for the uncomfortable reality of how a polygraph goes down at FBI headquarters.
One of the things I learned about the way they did these polygraphs is basically it turned your arms blue. They'd raise your arm up. You couldn't move any part of your body during this polygraph as they go through a series of questions. Raised arm, sensors all over your body, fingers in the sensors as well. And by the time they're done, which each time would take like 25 minutes, my arm literally turned blue and couldn't feel my fingers.
Discomfort aside, Jim knew enough about the process to ace the test.
They needed some test lies so they can compare it to whether you're really lying on something important. So my question was, have you ever discussed classified information over in an unsecure area? Well, I said, no, I haven't. That's my lie.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that that would be a serious FBI no-no.
I know that I have. And the way I have is when I'd talk to another agent over an unsecure line, we'd talk around the issue. We wouldn't talk about it directly, but we'd talk around it so they would get the information. Now, technically, you're not supposed to do that, so I knew that would be my lie.
But rules are made to be, if not broken, then bent. And Jim's little indiscretions were nothing out of the ordinary.
No problem. Went through it, they got my little insignificant lie and sailed through the rest of it.
Which meant that, before long, Jim and Sal found themselves in an anonymous room at FBI HQ, surrounded by other members of the intelligence community who had a stake in their mysterious new case.
As well as a representative for the CI unit at headquarters.
Jim was told that an undisclosed source had blown the whistle on a Chinese spy leaking technology developed for the US Navy to the People's Republic.
It was very ambiguous information. Facility, technologies leaving there, that's it. They said they didn't know the name, so they couldn't give us a name. They told us the technologies were leaving a facility called Power Paragon, which is a subsidiary of L3 Communications at the time.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Power Paragon was a defense technology company based out of Anaheim, Orange County, Jim's turf. So it was up to Sarah 4 to identify the leak inside the company. And to begin with, that came down to plain old detective work. A long process of elimination.
Well, who would have access to information about Quiet Electric Drive, to information about the new DDX destroyer, to information about electromagnetic aircraft launch systems? So by using each one of those technologies, we were able to narrow the field of who would have access to each one of those.
Naturally, Power Paragon's engineering staff were the first port of call.
So we were looking at all the engineers. And as we narrowed it down, we had a small field. And then one day, my co-case agent, Sheldon Fung, walks in and says, Jim, I know who it is. I said, you can't know who it is. We know from the pool we're drawing from, but he says, no, look at this guy. And he showed me a driver's license photo of Chi Mak.
Squinting at the photograph, Jim made out an elderly Asian gentleman.
Looks like the classic engineer, plaid shirt, polka dot tie.
As it turned out, Chi Mak was the only Power Paragon engineer with access to all the technologies that were leaking to China. Sarah 4 were pretty sure that they had their man. They ran the information back to FBI HQ, who confirmed their suspicions with their source. In the process, they discovered that someone we can only describe as a member of the intelligence community had actually known the identity of their target all along.
Well, as to why it was kept from us, paranoia, I suspect. A lot of the other U.S. intelligence agencies I ran into evidenced snobbery towards the FBI.
As you'll know, if you've spent much time with us here on True Spies, the American intelligence community is riddled with interagency rivalries. To some, the FBI are perceived as glorified cops, unfit to mingle in the world of gentlemen spies. How wrong they are. But there was another potential reason for their reticence.
If the Chinese ever found out, it might help them track down, obviously, who had knowledge of Chi's name or how it was collected. It might lead into that. So I suspect that's why they did it.
Bureaucratic irritations aside, it also transpired that Chi Mak's wife, Rebecca, his brother, Chi Mak, and his wife, Phuc, were all part of the same ring of Chinese assets. So the investigation was underway. And the first step, as always, was surveillance. But watching Chi Mak's house in the small Californian city of Downey, they realized that nobody was home.
I wanted to double check where he was because he wasn't at work and we didn't want to approach anybody at work. This is too sensitive a case to go and ask reckless questions that might end up talking to someone who's a friend of his. So we need to prove it separately. So I actually called Chi Mak's telephone number at work on a Sunday in case he was in, hoping he wouldn't answer there. He didn't. Got a voicemail saying he was out of reach for the next 3 weeks on vacation.
When a known spy goes on holiday, you can't assume he's there for margaritas on the beach. Jim's team needed to know where he'd gone and whether that information might point to more evidence of wrongdoing.
So we contacted our other sources in the U.S. government to figure out his travel and found out that he'd traveled to Taiwan. Now, we didn't believe that. We believed he'd traveled to Taiwan and then caught a connecting flight to China, which turned out to be the whole pattern of his travel. He never flew directly to China. He didn't want any record in his passport of flying to China. He'd always fly to the Philippines or South Korea, Japan, or Taiwan, and then take a separate flight in and out of China. So then we looked for his return flight, found a flight coming back, again from Taiwan. He landed, and we watched him come back into his home that evening.
Now, the game could begin in earnest. Sarah 4, with the help of surveillance specialists out of LA, got to work.
Initially, it was just physical surveillance, meaning people following him. We also set up CCTVs, what we call pole cameras. Cameras usually put on poles, watching the front door so we could watch him come and go from his house.
You can picture the scene, can't you? A windowless van parked up on the road, branded with the name of some ludicrously anonymous company, Floral Bouquets Incorporated, or something. As the target moves off his driveway, it pulls away from the curb to follow behind, at a respectable distance, of course. Believe it or not, that's not how this goes in real life.
If we really acted like that, we'd get caught every time because, they're in the rearview mirror following. That doesn't work, especially if you're going to watch someone long term. So we had a camera watching them, a hidden camera from outside. And then we had our surveillance units called SSG. They're not agents. They're just specialists in surveillance. So they would be positioned at choke points outside the neighborhood. So we could be watching the camera, announce to them that Chi Mak was leaving, he was going this direction on this street, and then they would pick him up when he left the neighborhood.
What the SSGs reported was unusual, to say the least. Chi Mak and his wife Rebecca were full of intriguing little quirks.
One of the problems with surveilling the Maks was they're very strange people. We ended up thinking every time through the filter, are they doing this because they're such weird people or because it's some sort of tradecraft and, they're trying to lose surveillance? One of the weird behaviors that really stuck out is every week they'd have a routine where they would go to the gas station and gas up the car. And while they're gassing up the car, they would take out the paper rags and squeegees that were available, and they would wash the entire car, not just the windows, everything. Now, we thought, first, this is a great counter-surveillance technique. They're getting a 360 view of the neighborhood, looking around, maybe trying to spot surveillance.
As the FBI's surveillance went on, the real reason for this so-called surveillance detection effort became embarrassingly clear.
These people were real skinflints. They didn't want to spring for a hose or pay for the water or soap or sponges or anything if you're going to wash your car at home. And obviously they're not going to go to a car wash. They were hardcore Maoists. They grew up in China that way. And they didn't spend a cent they didn't have to spend.
Even what we think of as the most obvious tradecraft, a weekly letter sent like clockwork from a mailbox, proved to be nothing more than the rigid routine of an elderly, set-in-their-ways couple.
Eventually, our surveillance guys put a marker in the mailbox, and then we went to the postman, found their letter, and every time it was just a check to the bank.
But surely, not everything was that innocent.
After the mailing, they would go to a hardware store. They'd go on Saturday morning, and they would make a beeline back to the lumber section in the back. And they'd stay there for like a half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then they'd leave, never buying anything. So we're wondering, are they making a dead drop back there? Are they picking up something, making a pickup back amongst the lumber?
By the way, we should mention that the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, or NCIS, was a part of this operation too. And they were just as baffled as Jim and Sarah Four by the Mac's little routine at the hardware store.
One week we sent in a unit ahead of them to watch them. This unit was provided by NCIS. We didn't want to burn any of our permanently assigned people. And what they would do is on their way in, they would grab a quick black coffee. Turns out between 9 and 10 every Saturday morning, this store would provide free coffee to its customers.
Week in, week out, the Macs would claim their free coffee.
Drink coffee in the lumber, throw the cup back there, and then they'd leave again. I think they'd do this back there because they didn't want the employees to see that every week they came and drank coffee and never bought anything.
Social embarrassment, not international espionage, had been at the root of the Mac's long, clandestine visits.
Well, there was one small illegal thing we found out she and Rebecca were doing. Rebecca kept stealing batteries from these stores. They would go to other stores and they wouldn't buy anything, but she'd steal batteries.
Not entirely ethical, but hardly enough to put her away. Meanwhile, 6 hours down the highway, in the city of Fremont, Chi Mak's brother and sister-in-law were the subjects of their own surveillance effort, and this was proving to be far more fruitful.
As far as Ty and his wife Fook, he was working at Phoenix Satellite Television. That was his job.
Phoenix Television is a station with ties to the Chinese state, with its American headquarters in California. So far, so legal. But Fook was a different story.
As soon as her feet hit the ground in the United States in 2001, she started an illegal marriage fraud immigration business. Basically, she had requests from rich Chinese who wanted to move to the United States, and she'd match them up with poor Americans who needed the money, and she'd arrange fake marriages. And she got so prolific at one point that she was earning sometimes $30,000 a month.
This was something that the FBI might be able to use. But not yet. They needed the whole spy ring to stay in play while they gathered enough evidence for a watertight case. And to do that, sometimes you've got to get your hands dirty. And back in Downey, that's just what Jim's team did. Let this be your introduction to the unglamorous world of the trash cover, which is an official-sounding phrase for what amounts to raccoon behavior, albeit with a greater sense of purpose.
If it's a low-level case, you're not even sure if you're going to have the requisite indications to pursue it, you might just grab trash one night. Usually it's in the middle of the night. You might grab one bag and see where it goes. But in a case like Chi Mak, where we knew it was going to be long-term, you have to make other arrangements because you're going to get caught sooner or later doing that. So we actually had to approach the trash collection company, and they introduced us to the driver who handled that neighborhood.
Jim paid the garbage truck driver directly to keep Chi and Rebecca's trash separate from the rest of their block and drive it out to an abandoned lot. There, it could be sifted through at leisure, although, all told, there was probably nothing leisurely about it.
There wasn't much recycling being done back then, so you had kitchen, foodstuffs, bathroom, paper trash all put together. You had to go through this mess to find out what little nuggets you could. And you can imagine summer after a week in Southern California or on rainy days, trash can be as gross as you can imagine.
Here's a tip for any aspiring agents out there. If you're digging through trash and see a grain of rice move by itself...
It ain't rice.
Like the surveillance, the trash cover on Chi and Rebecca didn't turn up much of interest. But when Jim's team dug through Ty and Fook's household waste, there was something that caught their eye.
Ty's was the first useful trash. And actually, it was the first couple of weeks we did it, but we didn't know it was useful at the time. It was basically an invoice, a quote for $17,000 worth of audio-video equipment.
The quote was addressed to someone called Pu Pei Lang, living in China.
Ty was born and raised in China, moved to Hong Kong before he came to the U.S. in 2001. So there was no indication it was anything other than him doing a side business, other than working for Phoenix, having his own little side business.
There are no laws against operating an import-export business. But remember, Jim is great at paperwork. He files the invoice away. You never know what might come in useful down the line. While all this is going on, the FBI is also trying to get eyes inside Chi's place of work, Power Paragon. After all, this is where the magic happens. But a direct approach to one of Chi's colleagues is off the table. They can't risk spooking their man. So they take a softer approach.
So we decided we're going to have to find somebody who we can trust at the company and off the books talk to them about what they know about Chi Mak and his access. So we did a lot of backgrounds on a lot of people in that company. And we come across this person, Pat. And I actually never say if it's a guy or a girl because I don't want anybody to try to figure out who it is. Pat was somebody in the company who appeared to have some access to Chi Mak.
The approach to the so-called Pat was made by Jim and a special agent of the NCIS named Gunnar Newquist.
So what Gunnar and I decided to do is Gunnar with NCIS would do the initial approach. Power Paragon did Navy contracts. So that way, if it went south, they might just think we were looking at fraud and contracting or something. We figured out first what Pat's routine was when they came to work, when they left, that sort of thing. We decided we don't want to approach Pat at home. Pat might turn us down and then tell superiors. We didn't want to do it on the way to work because the same might happen. We didn't want to call or visit Pat at work for the same reason. So we decided we'll wait till Pat's leaving work and we'll approach Pat then. So I drive up near Pat's car, park. Pat comes out right on time and Gunnar goes up, quickly introduces himself. I'm with NCIS, Special Agent. I've just got a few questions that you can help me with. You're not in any sort of trouble, etc. Can you meet us at a nearby restaurant?
Instantly reassured, Pat agrees. Jim and Gunnar follow them to a nearby restaurant.
We go inside and sit down with Pat. We don't tell Pat anything about Chi Mak or anything like that. We just say there's a problem with the company and it's not the company itself.
The agents are feeling Pat out, drip-feeding information to see how they'll react. If Pat goes to their bosses at this stage, Jim and Gunnar will know that they're not to be trusted. After that first meeting, Pat seems to have kept stum. So they arrange another. And another.
And we gain a real confidence in Pat, and then we finally breach with Pat that it's Chi Mak we're talking about, and we suspect Chi Mak's giving information to China. Pat's surprised. Pat knows Chi Mak and believes Chi Mak seems to be just a hard worker and a good guy, but agrees to cooperate, basically saying, I think that the help I provide you will show that she is in the clear and she's okay. So we start working with Pat from that point on to gain more information about the company. In fact, Pat is able to get our tech guys, who are basically pretending to be workmen, into the company so we can take a look at the facility and figure out what kind of electrical infrastructure it's got so we can figure out how we can eventually plant microphones at Chi Mak's desk.
Pat also put Jim in touch with Power Paragon's head of security. As you can imagine, he'd been an important ally when it came to actually assessing the building and carrying out covert work undisturbed. By now, it was June 2004, and the groundwork was in place. But the investigation was about to step up a gear.
Every successful business evolves. And to keep up, you need a bank relationship that evolves too. When you collaborate with Key Bank, you don't get one-size-fits-all solutions. Our expansive team of experts across industry verticals wouldn't be here if you did. Always ready with bespoke solutions for your biggest challenges and opportunities. We know all businesses are different, and that's why we approach business differently. Reimagine business as usual. Key Bank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
We had tapped into the phones at the house, but that doesn't require any sort of entry into the house. We started in June 2004 listening to the conversations taking place in both Mak families, Chi Maks and Chi Maks. But we needed more than that. So by August of 2004, we had learned that Chi and Rebecca were going to Alaska on a cruise.
Yes, even skinflint spies need a holiday. Surprised as they were, Jim's team saw an opportunity.
So for a week, they were going to fly up to Vancouver, get on a boat, and tour the glaciers in Alaska.
Plenty of time to enter that little house in Downey, California, and see what they could find. And they'd have to make the most of the brief window they had.
Rebecca never left, and if Chi and Rebecca left, it was only for short shopping trips to come back. So we had no opportunity to get in before that.
The FBI made preparations for the entry. They surveilled the neighborhood, taking note of who came and went in the vicinity of the Mak house.
When people come out to smoke on their porch or use a bathroom that faces the house, or when they walk their dog in the middle of the night, all the variables.
Expert covert entry contractors, known as flaps and seals operatives, were brought in to assist.
And we sat down with our experts, and after we briefed them, they said, this is the best ever we've had for preparation for entry. It encouraged us. None of us had done one of these before, so we were looking forward to it.
Even getting to the house undetected required a huge amount of forward planning.
And by the time that August came around, our tech guys in LA had actually purchased a used blue Plymouth Voyager, same year as the Maks had. And see, they always parked that in the front on the curb. And they never really talked to their neighbors, so their neighbors didn't know when they would travel.
The Mak's real car was parked up at LAX, but it didn't avoid the attentions of the FBI.
After they left the vehicle and flew off, we entered their vehicle and planted microphones in that one. And then we were ready to go into their house.
Which brings us back to the beginning of this story. A squad of FBI agents, sardined into the imposter minivan, rolling towards the Mak's empty house in the dead of night.
We park in front of the house. We have to all stay down. And we're waiting for the all-clear signal from surveillance, and our lookout units are watching the cameras on the neighborhood. Nobody's coming. Okay, you're good. Open the door very quietly. A specialist has already been in there, has opened the door, and is waiting for us. All the lights are off in the house. Porch light is out because we made sure it was out days earlier. And we walk in. I'm like the last one in, close the door. It's completely dark. It's a very small house, like 750 square feet for the whole house. So we're all jammed in there together. It's summertime, the hottest part of the summertime. This house has been closed for days. Can't turn on air conditioning, can't open windows or curtains, and it's just a hot box. We're standing there together, waiting for the all clear to start fanning out. We've all been given a little flashlight with a little red cover on it so we can look for things, but obviously you got to keep the beam below the windows. And no silhouetting. We want any neighbors, anybody else to be seeing movement or hear movement.
Fanning through the house, Jim's eyes alight on stacks of documents. But photographing them without leaving a trace will prove difficult. As well as being notoriously cheap, the Maks make for poor housekeepers.
Everything was covered with layers of dust. There were piles of papers on the coffee table. If you move those papers, it'll leave a trail that they might see later. So you have to be very careful. You don't touch the top document. The others, you keep track of what the order is, and you slowly take photographs of the documents you're interested in. And that was a great thing about this search. We found piles of technical documents all over his house, documents that were not to be stored in a home, they had to be either in a skiff or a special safe.
But the leave no trace aspect of a covert search means that, inevitably, some evidence isn't accessible.
Best example is in the corner of the living room was a small 2-drawer filing cabinet right next to the wall. Well, because our housekeeping was so poor, there were spider webs extending from the wall to the handles of each one of those drawers. So we couldn't pull it out. It would break the spider web. We don't have spider web under contract to replace that. For months and months and months, we didn't know what was in that filing cabinet.
But what they do get is enough. For now. The search shows that Chi Mak has been taking sensitive documents home from work, documents that should, in no way, ever enter the hands of the Chinese government.
Most of it was not classified, but it was restricted, or called no foreign dissemination. Couldn't leave the United States and couldn't be shown to someone who wasn't a U.S. citizen. Even then, had to be a U.S. citizen with a reason to see it.
Now, the FBI can definitively tie Chi to the various secret technologies whose illegal dissemination sparked this case.
We couldn't prove passage at that point at all, even close to it. But what we could show is that he had collected everything that was going over to China. So that helped. That helped a lot.
Laptops and hard drives reveal more of the same. They're shuffled out of the house and taken back to a command center at a nearby park to be copied, before being returned to their original places. Soon, the agents have finished their work. It's time to go. But there's a hitch.
We all collected by the front door waiting for the all clear sign to go out and leave. Then we heard from one of the specialists in the back, and he's the guy who's going to clear the house to make sure we haven't left any signs that we've been there. And he starts screaming and cursing like a sailor back there.
Luckily, the noise of the nearby highway drowns out the flaps and seals man's cursing.
But he's saying, "What the F is going on here?" He says, "There's spots all over the house. It looks like the damn place has smallpox." And everyone's looking around confused, like, what is he talking about? We look down at the carpet, and all the carpet has polka dots everywhere, indentations in the carpet.
Jim's heart sinks. His face reddens. He has an idea of how this potentially disastrous oversight might have come about.
I knew this was all stealth. We didn't want anybody to see us going into their house, so unfortunately I fell victim to the Hollywood stereotype or cliche, and I dressed in all dark clothes. But all my shoes had reflective tape on it, except for I was coaching and sometimes reffing in my daughter's soccer league, so I did have a pair of Adidas cleats, the 3 white stripes. Nothing reflective, but I thought the white stood out too much, so I took black electrical tape and put it on the 3 stripes. And said, I'll wear these.
It's these soccer cleats that swim before Jim's inner eye as the specialist turns the air blue.
I'm the only one who realizes it, thankfully, at the time. It's my cleats. I've been walking around this whole house in cleats. So I didn't say anything. I stepped off the carpet onto the wood floor, and I decided I'm going to go with the second wave of people leaving.
In Jim's defense, at this point in the case, he's working long days, 7 days a week. We can let him off this time. The covert entries go on for a week, while Chi Mak and Rebecca enjoy Alaska. Microphones are fitted around the house, an operation that requires the FBI squad to rewire the Mac's crumbling data lines to give them enough bandwidth to transmit the audio remotely. Don't say the government never does anything for you. As 2004 wears on, Jim notices something different in Chi's behavior outside of work. He started ramping up his conference attendance.
Of course, that worried us because if you go to conferences, it's hard to monitor someone, who they're talking to. Anyone who's gone to seminars, conferences, you meet with people at dinner and at lunch, and then you sit with them in some of these seminars. So that was worrisome as well. Who's he meeting with? And as it turned out, we found out through later coverages that he was recruiting somebody to provide materials to China as well.
But as it turned out, Feeling out prospective recruits wasn't Chi's main reason for attending. Conferences of the kind Chi went to invited some attendees to write articles for the event.
Chi would write these articles for conferences, and he would include classified information, but he wouldn't indicate it was classified, simply so that he could have it put out surreptitiously in the public domain.
Unfortunately, this would only come to light later in the investigation. At this point in 2004, Chi was, as far as anyone could tell, doing nothing out of the ordinary.
In fact, quite normal for them to go to these naval conferences. He, at one time, Chi Mak, during 2004, was the chairman of the U.S. effort, meaning all the different companies working on quiet electric drive for the U.S. Navy.
A year into the case, in early 2005, Jim's team were under extreme pressure to deliver results. They knew that Chi was almost certainly gathering the material that was finding its way to China, but they couldn't prove how he was actually doing it.
We're not going to be able to bring charges yet, and we were getting a lot of pressure because all the resources we were using, we didn't have a case yet to go to trial.
Jim and his supervisor had a tough decision to make.
To bring it to an ending or decide that we're going to take this from a focus on catching them into a focus of making it just an intelligence case where we gather information, and maybe we'd think about some operation where we can give them disinformation or isolate them from the technologies that are threatened or something like that.
Fortunately, for this podcast anyway, they decided against it.
I didn't want to do that. I knew we were going to catch this guy if we stayed on him, but I was running out of ammo, so to speak. Despite his collection, we couldn't show transportation. He hadn't traveled the whole time to China. His brother, Ty, hadn't traveled to China, so we couldn't prove any sort of transportation.
But in counter-espionage, as in life, you never know what's around the corner.
A gift from God came. Number one, my team going through the trash.
The humble trash cover, hundreds of man-hours of stinking, dirty work, was about to turn up gold. Next time on True Spies, Jim Gaylord hits the motherlode.
Jet propulsion, airless propulsion, weapon standardization, electromagnetic motors, satellite communications.
And Chi Mak goes toe-to-toe with the American justice system.
He lied like nobody I've ever seen, unashamedly.
That's next time on True Spies. And if you'd like to hear this story's conclusion a week early and ad-free, be sure to subscribe to SPYSCAPE Plus at plus.spyscape.com. Disclaimer. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the subject. These stories are told from their perspective, and their authenticity should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. If you're enjoying this podcast, please click now to give it a 5-star rating or leave a review. Ratings and reviews help people discover the podcast and help us bring you more great stories. And if you have some time, why not forward the podcast to a friend?
Hey folks, get ready for a new season of Blowback coming Monday, September 22nd. This time around, we're covering the Cold War showdown in Africa.
When apartheid South Africa invades the newly independent nation of Angola, revolutionary Cuba sends its own army to defend its African ally, while the United States backs a warlord whose only goal is power.
Subscribe now at blowback.show and get the entire season when it drops, ad-free. Blowback.show.
Life's full of big money decisions. Dividend versus growth stocks, tapping home equity, even navigating tariffs.
And for every smart tip out there, there's another one that sounds smart but isn't.
That's where NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast comes in. I'm Sean Piles, a certified financial planner professional.
And I'm Elizabeth Ayola. On NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast, our finance journalists do the homework so you can make confident wealth-building moves.
Whether you're building your portfolio or protecting it, we've got the facts and a little fun along the way.
Follow NerdWallet's Smart Money Podcast on your favorite podcast app.